no, it needs to be this reference and this reference. And I like literally talk to myself while I'm listening, because that's such a crucial part of songwriting, is being able to listen back to what you've created with a really constructively critical eye and then make it better. Hey everyone, I'm J Maya, and I'm here with PopShift explaining the context behind the lyrics to my single Golden Age. Circe was divine, a tale of prose before the swine, an empress, a brilliant sorceress. And then a lover scorned, and that's how the story's told. Oh, the rest, they stole the magic. A Golden Age was inspired by a desire to celebrate the women I grew up reading about. The women who indisputably changed the course of history, but who I felt never really got their due. And a prime example of this is Circe. That's the authentic Greek pronunciation. I apologize if I'm butchering it. More popularly known as Circe. She was a witch from Greek mythology who lived alone on an island, and she was infamous for turning sailors who would wash up on her shores into pigs. And she's most famous for doing that in the Odyssey, when she turns Odysseus's crew into pigs. In this line, I'm sharing my opinion that even though Circe is most known for her affair with Odysseus, it's the least interesting thing about her. She is a powerful, independent woman who wields magic and can turn her enemies into animals. Why are we not talking about that more than the affair? And Sita's archetype, the perfect image of a wife. Did we ignore the fire in her soul? A fun fact about me is actually that my father's side of the family comes from Mythology, which is most known for being the birthplace of Sita. So I've actually always felt a really strong connection to her character. Sita is the wife of Rama in the Ramayana, Hindu epic. She is often held up culturally as the ideal for womanhood, wifehood, and motherhood. While those things are undoubtedly true, I wanted to draw attention to the fact that while we celebrate these traditionally feminine virtues of hers, there are other traits that she exhibits in the Ramayana, like strength and independence in the face of really unspeakable adversity. In fact, in this line, when I talk about fire, it's a reference to the test of fire that Sita goes through in the Ramayana to prove her innocence and purity. Remember Amy's plea, I know the poets disagree. When it comes to love, did we even have control? This is a reference to Amy March from the Little Women series, but the line that I'm referencing actually comes from the movie adaptation that came out a couple of years ago. It's this really famous scene where Amy is talking to Laurie about love, and she says something to the effect of, I think we have some control over who we love. And Timothée Chalamet as Laurie responds, I think the poets might disagree. And to that, Amy says, well, I'm not a poet, I'm a woman. And she goes into this speech about how women aren't often afforded the luxury of being able to love whoever they want because they have to worry about economic stability. They can't make their own money in that time. I was really struck by this line, and it kind of made me question all the things that we think we know about women throughout history that are just not true. They think they know us because they wrote the history books. Here's to the woman who don't ever seem to get a say in how the pages get portrayed. We'll never really know what the lives of women were like back in the day because the people who were writing the stories were men. I'd like to think that historically women were much more complex than we imagine them to be now because of the history books we've read. So this is kind of a cheers to the women in history who never really got the opportunity to tell their own story. Here's to the woman who know everything the poets say and be a menace anyway. The historians who looked away, the game was set before it played. We're breaking out behind the cage cause that's some that we won't take. The woman who wrote stories in the rosy paper, bringing back the golden age. A golden age is a period of history where a civilization experiences amazing technological, artistic, literary, and scientific achievements. The crux of this song is basically that women have never really gotten the chance to get their true golden age. And while this song is celebrating the underrepresented women of history, I think this is a point that goes to any minority that isn't traditionally included in the narratives and stories that we hear as kids about history. A pretty penny prize without a thought behind the eyes, don't get a say, it's in our DNA. Basically, I used to spend a lot of time in my local library, potentially not a surprise to people listening at home. And one day, a librarian came up to me while I was jotting down a poem, and she let me know that there was a poetry competition going on at the library and that I should enter, and I thought, why not? And I just literally gave her the piece of paper that I was writing on as my poem. It was a poem called My Daughter Penny, and it included a lot of idioms about pennies. So, a penny for your thoughts, can I get your 2 cents, 1 a penny, 2 a penny. Somehow, I ended up winning the competition. I was ecstatic about it. And the prize for the competition was that the poem was posted at the entrance of the library so everyone could read it when they walked in. At this time, my parents didn't know that I wrote creatively, let alone was writing poetry. So one day my dad came to the library to pick me up, and he saw this poem and my name on it, and that's how he learned that I was a poet and a writer. So one of the lines in the poem is a pretty penny prize, and the idea is basically, a pretty penny is often a way that people describe beautiful women, but a penny is worth a lot less than other coins. So it's basically suggesting that, a woman might be beautiful, but her opinions are not worth that much. 'Cause they refuse to see beyond commodities. We can be sweet with a vicious streak, call that dichotomy. I think there's been this amazing movement in the last few years for women to reclaim ownership of their bodies, and I just wanted to celebrate that with this line. And there's actually also in this line a subtle reference to Rosalind Franklin, who was critical to the discovery of the double helix to the structure of DNA. She didn't get a lot of credit for it in her lifetime, and it's only recently that people have begun to recognize her. I just think it's ironic that sometimes people point to genetics to describe women's quote-unquote inferiority to men without knowing that we would not even have a scientific understanding of genetics or DNA if not for a woman, and an underrated woman at that. So I just wanted to point out the irony in this line. Queens wear more than just their crowns. They keep castles from crumbling down. Yeah, you can't keep us on the ground. We're coming for your kingdom now. There's so much work that women do that is kind of dismissed as not really that important. And I just basically wanted to say, no, it's important. It's very important. All the kingdoms throughout history, I'm sure there were some amazing queens that never really got their due and were never really talked about that made sure that those kingdoms were up and running. I think sometimes throughout history and mythology, women are cast into these one-sided narratives. Either they're prim and proper and beautiful and intrinsically, ideally feminine, or they're witches. I really love when women are aware of this binary that exists and do what they want anyway, because we only have one life, so you gotta be yourself. That's it. That is the subtext to my single Golden Age, now available everywhere on all streaming platforms. And if you want to follow my musical journey, you can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at jmayamusic.